I remember that day as clearly as if it had happened this morning. I am Jacob Wilson, 32 years old, an agricultural engineer living in Wichita, Kansas, a small city surrounded by endless wheat fields where life flows as slowly as the Arkansas River. My wedding day with Jessica was the moment I thought everything had finally settled into a peaceful orbit. I had waited so long for this day. After years of struggling with work, surveying fields under scorching sun, I was finally going to have a little family of my own. A smile stayed on my face throughout the entire event, not a forced one, but genuine joy from the heart. I walked among the tables, shaking hands with one person after another, greeting distant and close relatives, savoring every second. "Congratulations, Jacob. Wishing you both 100 years of happiness." Someone patted my shoulder and I smiled back, feeling like this was the start of a life free from worries. Our wedding was well organized, but not ostentatious. We chose a small hall on the outskirts of Wichita, with rustic wooden tables and simple floral decorations, mostly wildflowers picked from the countryside because Jessica liked them that way. I didn't care much about appearances as long as everyone was happy, but my Wilson family was different. They always focused on outward image, on saving face. My parents, Alan and Betty, kept scrutinizing the guests, nitpicking every little detail. "That tablecloth is a bit old, isn't it? Why not replace it with a newer one?" my mother whispered to my father, her eyes scanning the relatives as if taking inventory. They wanted the wedding to meet their standards so they could show off to everyone, giving no one reason to criticize. I found it amusing, but I was used to it. My family had always been like that, polished on the outside but full of cracks underneath. My parents were busy going around, subtly boasting about jobs, connections, and their children's success. "This is my youngest son, an agricultural engineer working on a big government project," my father declared proudly to an uncle, his voice booming over the music. My mother smiled brightly and added, "And his older brother, Trevor, is already a bank manager. All our kids are accomplished." I stood a little distance away, watching them with mixed feelings. I knew they loved me, but the way they showed it always made me feel like we were performing. My brother Trevor stood beside them with a polite smile, but his eyes were full of smugness and judgment. He was 5 years older, always seeing himself as the model big brother. But in reality, he was competitive and often belittled what I did. "Jacob, that suit makes you look a bit rustic, doesn't it?" he whispered to me that morning with a crooked smile. I just smiled it off, not wanting to argue on my happy day. The reception was reaching its peak. Guests raised glasses and toasts. Laughter and conversation filled the air, the clinking of glasses echoing. Jessica beside me, beautiful in her simple white dress, held my hand tighter. My heart pounded with happiness. But then, amid the noisy crowd, a figure slowly appeared. My grandmother, Dorothy Wilson. She walked softly, her frail frame in simple clothes, a gray sweater and an earth-brown long skirt, no striking jewelry, no makeup. She almost blended into the crowd. Many people didn't even notice and continued chatting and laughing. I recognized her immediately. Grandma lived in an old house on the outskirts and rarely appeared at events like this. She was nearly 80 and her life had been one of frugality and simplicity. But today she moved forward toward the small stage where Jessica and I stood. My heart beat a little faster. Grandma stopped in front of me in full view of all the relatives. Her hand trembled slightly, perhaps from age or emotion, but her eyes were steady, looking straight at me as if imparting something sacred. She pulled a check from her pocket and handed it to me. I took it, looked down, and nearly dropped it. The amount, $500,000. The figure hit me like a slow exploding bomb. I stood stunned for a moment, my mind reeling. Was this real? Grandma, who had lived frugally her whole life, saving every penny, was now giving me this enormous sum. But then a radiant smile spread across my face. Not because of the amount, though it was staggering, but because of the feeling of her blessing. She trusted me, giving me something deeply personal amid all this noise. "Thank you, Grandma, for this gift," I whispered, voice choking. She just nodded slightly, her eyes warm. In that moment, it felt like it was just the two of us in the world. But below the stage, the atmosphere shifted noticeably. I glanced down and caught my parents' expressions. Dad Alan frowned deeply, leaning in to whisper to Mom, voice full of irritation, "She's really lost it. Doing something like this in front of all the relatives, flaunting money, it's embarrassing for the family." Mom Betty nodded repeatedly, her face flushed with discomfort. Exactly. Who does that at a wedding? What was she thinking? In their eyes, Grandma's act wasn't a blessing, but something ridiculous that needed hiding. They looked at her as if she had ruined a perfect ceremony they had worked hard to maintain for appearances. My heart suddenly tightened. I couldn't understand it. Grandma had never been one to show off, let alone do anything frivolous or impulsive. Then I heard a soft, sarcastic chuckle from my brother. Trevor smirked, shaking his head, voice half joking, half disdainful, loud enough for a few nearby people to hear. "Oh my God, Grandma, what's this act? Just for laughs? You've ruined the formal atmosphere of the wedding." His eyes swept over Grandma with undisguised mockery, as if her action was the most absurd thing possible today. I stood frozen, throat tight. I wanted to say something, to defend her, to say she wasn't wrong. But for some reason the words stuck, unable to come out. Then the whispers began to spread, at first scattered, then merging into an uncomfortable wave. A few relatives exchanged glances, eyes mixing suspicion and curiosity without hiding it. "Where did Dorothy get that kind of money? She's lived frugally her whole life. We've never seen her well off," one aunt whispered to someone nearby. "It's probably a fake check. These days, who knows what tricks people play?" the other replied confidently, as if seeing through it all. Those words quickly found agreement. Most people reassured each other with nods and half smiles, as if it were just a humorous misunderstanding to brush off. "Come on, it's just a joke, Jacob." An uncle stepped forward, patting my shoulder lightly with a loud laugh, as if helping me out of an awkward spot. "Don't take it seriously. Take that check to the bank and you'll be embarrassed." A few chuckles rippled around, sounding light but carrying clear underlying tension. Eyes kept turning toward me, waiting, probing, as if I were in a play and everyone wanted to see whether I would believe Grandma or turn my back on her right then and there. I stood there, confused amid the conflicting chatter, heart pounding, mind in turmoil. The check in my hand burned hot, like a secret waiting to be uncovered. Jessica beside me gently tugged my hand, her face practical and cautious. "Don't get your hopes up. It might just be Grandma's joke," she whispered, voice worried. I knew she was protecting me, but deep inside, a quiet faith still flickered. Grandma had never made empty promises. She was the only one in the family who was always honest, always on my side. Grandma stood quietly for a moment amid the mocking and doubtful looks. I caught a glimpse of sadness in her eyes, a hurt she tried to hide. But she didn't justify or explain. She simply turned and walked slowly back to her seat, as if accustomed to being overlooked her whole life. My heart ached sharply. Why were they treating her like this? What had she done wrong? I took a deep breath, trying to compose myself. Folding the check and slipping it into my suit pocket, I smiled and continued the ceremony as if nothing had happened. "Thank you, everyone. Let's keep raising our glasses," I said loudly, voice forced cheerful. But inside, a storm was brewing. That quiet faith still burned. Grandma wouldn't lie to me. Was this check real or just a joke? I didn't know, but the suspense made my heart race throughout the rest of the reception. The reception continued for a few more hours, with lively music, endless toasts, and warm hugs from relatives. Jessica stayed by my side, holding my hand tightly, but I noticed her glancing at my suit pocket several times, her eyes filled with worry. "Are you still okay?" she whispered as we danced. I nodded and smiled. "I'm fine, honey. Just a bit surprised, that's all." But in reality, my mind was reeling. Everyone around us kept laughing and talking, but I could sense the furtive glances and whispers about Grandma's strange gift. My parents avoided the topic, pretending to be busy with guests, while my brother Trevor smirked sarcastically whenever our eyes met. That night, as people started leaving, I quietly looked at Grandma. She sat in a corner smiling kindly, and when I approached, she just patted my hand gently. "Wishing you happiness, Jacob." Not a word of explanation. She turned away, looking tired but serene, which only heightened the suspense inside me. The days after the wedding passed in a blur of busyness and exhaustion. We spent time on a short honeymoon at a resort near Wichita. Just a few days, since my job didn't allow for a longer break. Jessica was excited about the outings and shopping, but I couldn't stop thinking about the check. I kept it safely tucked in my desk drawer at home, untouched, as if afraid that handling it would make it disappear. Our new life began with cozy dinners, future plans, and gradually everything settled down. My agricultural engineering work pulled me back in with field surveys and reports on new crop varieties. Jessica was busy with her office job, and we started getting used to married life. But then one quiet evening, with light rain pattering outside the window, it suddenly came back to me. I was sitting alone in the living room while Jessica was showering. Our small rented apartment on the outskirts of Wichita, with its simple furnishings, suddenly felt cramped. I opened the drawer and took out the check. The amount, $500,000, was still there, printed clearly with Grandma's slightly shaky signature. I examined it over and over, turning it back and forth under the dim yellow light. My heart beat faster. An indescribable feeling rose, a mix of hope and doubt. What if it's real? I could buy a house, pay off debts, live more comfortably, I thought to myself. But then the family's warnings flooded back. "It's just a joke check, don't believe it." Doubt crept in, making my hands tremble slightly. Grandma had lived frugally her whole life. Where would she get that kind of money? Was it fake? But my faith in her gradually overpowered everything. She had never lied to me. From childhood, she was the only one in the family who truly listened, advising without judgment. Grandma isn't like that, I told myself, and a decision was made. The next morning, I quietly decided to take the check to the bank. I told no one, not even Jessica, as if saying it aloud would make everything vanish into thin air. I got up early, put on my work clothes, and drove to the familiar bank branch in downtown Wichita. On the way, my heart pounded, my hands gripped the steering wheel tightly. If it's fake, I'll be so embarrassed in front of the bank staff. But if it's real, I don't know what to do next. Light rain continued, adding to the tension. I parked, took a deep breath, and walked into the bank, trying to look as calm as possible. The teller counter was busy, but I chose a young employee, hoping it would be quick. "Hello, I'd like to verify and deposit this check," I said, trying to keep my voice steady as I slid it through the slot. The teller smiled, took it, then her eyes widened at the amount. "Oh, that's a large sum. Let me check it for you." And then time stretched endlessly. She typed on the keyboard, made verification calls, cross-checked Grandma's account details. I couldn't stand still, my foot tapped the floor, heart racing like a drum. Sweat beaded on my forehead despite the cool air conditioning. Why is it taking so long? Is there a problem? I wondered, glancing at the clock. 5 minutes, 10, then 15. People around seemed to stare curiously, or was it my imagination? The suspense made me want to run away, but I stayed, gripping the counter rail. Finally, the teller looked up and smiled. "Sir, the check is completely valid. The funds have been transferred directly to your account. Congratulations." I nearly went numb. My ears rang, my mind spun. The check is real. $500,000 deposited into my account. I stammered, voice trembling. She nodded and printed the receipt for me. Overwhelmed by the reality that the money was genuine, exhilarated beyond words, yet bewildered by a situation far beyond imagination. My legs went weak. I had to lean on the counter to stay upright. Outside the bank, sunlight streamed down, but the world around me felt hazy. I sat in the car, breathing heavily, tears rolling down without realizing it. Joy mixed with worry. Where did this money come from? Why did she give it to me? I didn't go home right away. Instead, I drove straight to Grandma's house, an old place on the outskirts of Wichita where she lived alone since Grandpa passed. On the way, one question dominated my mind. The origin of that money. The house appeared, old tiled roof, yard overgrown with weeds. I parked, rushed in, heart pounding. I called out for Grandma. She opened the door looking calm, eyes affectionate. "Jacob, you're here? Come inside, dear." She led me into the simple living room with its old sofa and faint herbal tea scent. "The check you gave me, is it real? I deposited it today. But how do you have that much money? I'm so worried," I said, voice choking as I sat beside her. Grandma smiled slowly, voice serene. "That's all the savings your grandfather and I accumulated over our lifetime, Jacob. Your grandpa worked hard. I saved every penny. No big investments, just bank savings and a simple life. I believe you're the most deserving to receive it." I was stunned by the truth. Gratitude and emotion surged. Tears fell again. I hugged her tightly, thanking her over and over, feeling both love and remorse for how the family had doubted her. "Everyone thought you were joking, Grandma. I'm sorry on their behalf." She patted my back. "It's okay, dear. I'm used to it." Leaving her house, I drove home, mind still reeling. That money wasn't just money, it was proof of her faith in me. When I got home, Jessica was cooking dinner. I told her everything, voice trembling. "Honey, the check from Grandma is real. Today I deposited $500,000. Jessica couldn't hide her initial joy. Her eyes lit up. "Really? Oh my God, that's amazing." She hugged me, beaming. But very quickly her expression turned serious. "Honey, this is a huge opportunity. We need to use it right away. Don't let it go to waste." She saw the money as a chance to act immediately, without delay. From that evening on, Jessica started persuading me. "I think we should buy a house as soon as possible. This rented apartment is cramped, and with that money we can settle down properly. It'll also avoid prying eyes from family and outsiders." I felt differently. I planned to keep it as emergency savings. "I think we should save it. Life has many surprises. My job isn't stable. Buying a house now would be too rushed." We debated gently at first, but Jessica persisted. Every evening she brought out real estate catalogs, pointing to beautiful homes on the outskirts of Wichita with large yards. "Look at this. One with 3 bedrooms, close to your work. We'd have so much more space." The pressure became clearer. Not arguments, but constant persuasion, expectant looks. After days of thinking, I started to waver. Lying awake beside Jessica, I thought about the future. Maybe she's right. A house would be a good foundation. Finally, I set aside my original plan and agreed to start house hunting with her. "Okay, honey, let's go look at houses." Jessica cheered joyfully, hugging me tightly. But deep inside, a vague worry lingered. This money was from Grandma, and now we were using it. Was this the right decision? The new journey began, but that suspense kept me restless. The house hunting process was not as easy as I had imagined. We spent weeks wandering all over Wichita, from quiet suburbs to newly developed neighborhoods. Jessica was so excited. She listed pros and cons, measured every corner as if already envisioning our future life. Each time we viewed a house, my heart raced with a mix of suspense and excitement. What if we choose wrong? This is Grandma's money. We can't waste it, I thought to myself. Finally, after much deliberation, we found the perfect house. A spacious 2-story home with all the amenities, a lush backyard, and a garage big enough for my work truck. It was in a peaceful suburban area, yet convenient to the highway. Signing the contract, making the payment, and holding the keys in my hand felt like a new chapter truly opening in our married life. "From now on, this will be our new home," I whispered to Jessica, hugging her in the afternoon sunlight. But that vague worry still lingered. What would the family think when they found out? To mark this new beginning, we decided to host a cozy housewarming party. Nothing extravagant, just inviting close family and a few dear friends. Jessica handled the decorations, simple balloons, a table of homemade food, fresh salads, grilled meat, and a home-baked cake. I was busy sending invitations, calling my parents, Trevor, and finally Grandma. When I heard her voice on the other end, my heart softened. "Grandma, I'd like to invite you to the housewarming. I want you to be the first to step into our new home," I said, trying to keep my voice light. She chuckled softly, her tone as kind as ever. "Yes, I'll come. Wishing you all the best, Jacob." On the day of the party, Wichita greeted us with an unusually beautiful afternoon. Gentle golden sunlight spread across the backyard. A light breeze carried the scent of freshly cut grass, making the atmosphere unexpectedly pleasant. Guests arrived gradually, greetings and laughter filled the once quiet yard. The Wilson family showed up in full. Dad Allen entered with his usual stern look but forced a polite smile. Mom Betty followed, carrying a basket of fruit she claimed was homegrown, speaking in a proud voice. Brother Trevor arrived with his wife and young child, looking busy but with eyes that couldn't hide their scrutiny. Finally, Grandma Dorothy. She walked slowly, needing a little support, but her smile remained gentle. As she looked around the new house, her gaze lingered a bit longer, as if silently blessing the place and me in her own special way. Everyone exclaimed in admiration from the moment they stepped inside. "Look at this, Jacob. Such spacious living. Modern interiors, great location. This must have cost a fortune, right?" An aunt cried out, running her hand over the new sofa. Dad patted my shoulder. "Well done, son. Newly married and already owning a house. You're doing great." Mom praised the kitchen. "Jessica, you're so talented. A house like this shows how hard you two have worked." Trevor nodded approvingly, but his eyes scanned every corner as if calculating. "Not bad, little brother. How much did it cost? Mortgage from the bank, I assume?" I smiled awkwardly, but discomfort started building inside. They saw it as proof of our rapid success, but I knew the truth. It was Grandma's money, not from salaries or loans. The atmosphere was filled with endless compliments, but gradually I felt uneasy under the subtle, speculative glances. They think we got rich suddenly. They're definitely guessing about the money source, I thought, heart beating faster. I didn't want them to keep misunderstanding. I didn't want Grandma doubted any further. The party was at its peak, glasses raised, soft music playing from the speakers. Jessica beamed beside me, but I decided to act. "Everyone, may I have your attention for a moment?" I spoke up, voice slightly trembling but resolute. The room gradually fell silent. All eyes turned to me. "Thank you all for coming to celebrate, but I want to clarify about this house. Do you remember the check Grandma gave at the wedding? I took it to the bank and deposited the full amount, $500,000. That's what bought this house." The words hung in the air and the room instantly plunged into silence. Laughter and chatter vanished. Only Grandma's soft cough echoed faintly from a corner, a fragile sign amid the heavy atmosphere. My heart pounded. I waited tensely for reactions. Jessica gripped my hand tighter, eyes worried. Trevor reacted first. He clutched his head, slumping in his chair, face contorted as if stabbed in the chest. "No way! This can't be happening. If only I hadn't done that back then. God, what have I done?" He muttered, voice shaking, words barely coherent. The whole room turned toward him in sympathy and confusion. I stood frozen, but then everything clicked clearly in my mind. 2 years ago at Trevor's wedding, Grandma had given him a similar check. The memory flooded back, painfully vivid. I remembered how Trevor had laughed mockingly, pushed by the surrounding taunts. He doubted it, fearing ridicule, fearing loss of face before the relatives. "What's this, Grandma? A joke? In front of everyone like this? It's embarrassing," he had said loudly, voice full of irritation, then without hesitation tore the check to pieces right in front of everyone, throwing it to the floor like trash. Grandma had just stood there. No explanation, no protest. She swallowed all the hurt, turned away, leaving behind her frail back and lonely figure amid the whispering crowd. And now, with the truth revealed, Trevor sat before me, face pale, hands limp. No more arrogance, no more sarcasm. Just a man facing his own mistake, too late to fix. He turned to look at Grandma. His eyes weren't exactly remorseful but mixed with regret and pleading, as if silently begging for a late chance. The whole room followed, falling silent. All gazes focused on Grandma, as if her words alone would decide everything. The air grew so tense I could hear my own heartbeat in my chest. Dad Allen broke the silence. He stepped forward, voice low but heavy and doubtful, trying to stay calm but unable to hide the strain. "Mom, explain this clearly. Where did such a large sum come from? How did you save it? Or was someone helping you? Why has the whole family never known anything about it?" The questions came rapid and urgent, sounding like an interrogation. His face flushed, his eyes fixed on her as if ready to seize any slip. Mom Betty immediately followed, voice softer but no less probing. She leaned forward, asking slowly, one by one, "Do you have any other savings left? Where have you been keeping that money all this time? Any records or documents? Or is there another amount you haven't mentioned?" Her question sounded concerned, but her eyes gleamed with barely hidden hope, as if groping for any remaining portions. Anything that might not yet have been given away. Trevor no longer held his initial sarcasm. He appeared regretful, eyes shifting, voice subdued as he recalled the past. "Grandma, I was wrong. I got carried away. I thought the check was fake. Please give me another chance, even just a small part. I'm so sorry." He spoke, voice trembling as if still hoping for some compensation. My heart tightened. Was he regretting the money more than the act itself? Grandma sat quietly for a long while, eyes calmly surveying the room. Then she gently shook her head, voice still slow. "That money was everything I had. Saved over a lifetime with your grandfather, Jacob. I've given it all to Jacob." She paused, then added, "Because Jacob was the only one who didn't doubt, who didn't treat the gift as a joke or a burden to family pride. That's why he deserves it." Her words were like a time bomb. The atmosphere in the house turned heavy and stifling. The initial joy of the housewarming completely vanished. In its place came belated regret. Trevor bowed his head, parents exchanged tense glances, and silent envy toward me. I felt the sharp glances as if I had stolen something from them, and deep in a few eyes lingered quiet doubt still directed at Grandma. The party ended awkwardly. Everyone left early, leaving the house silent. The truth had been revealed, but that intense suspense made me realize my family had never truly been united. After that housewarming party, heavy with lingering echoes, I tried to return to my familiar routine. Every morning I brewed coffee, kissed Jessica goodbye, then drove out to the fields, focusing on my agricultural engineering work. Surveys of new crop varieties and seasonal reports helped me push aside the tense atmosphere from that day. I tried to keep our married life and little family stable, as if all the storms had temporarily receded. Jessica still laughed and joked. We still had evenings cuddling while watching movies, but I sensed a vague distance. "What do you think about that party?" she asked softly once, and I just shook my head. "Forget it, honey. Everything's fine." But inside, the worry still smoldered. The family called less often, but every conversation was laced with implications. My parents inquired about Grandma, but in probing tones. Trevor went silent, as if nursing his regrets. Grandma still lived alone in her old house, and I visited often, bringing fruit or homemade bread. Those moments brought me peace, but also made me wonder. Had everything truly settled? 3 years passed in that fragile calm. We grew accustomed to the new house. Jessica advanced in her office job while I expanded my agricultural projects, even taking on a few small contracts. Life was serene, with weekend picnics and talks about starting a family. But then one day, working in the fields under Kansas's scorching sun, my phone rang. I wiped sweat from my brow and looked at the screen. Mom calling. "Jacob, get to the hospital quick. Grandma fell badly. She's in emergency." Her voice was urgent, full of worry. My heart tightened. My hands shook, holding the phone. "What happened to Grandma? I'm coming right now." I dropped everything, jumped in the truck, and floored it back to Wichita. On the drive, my mind spun. Grandma was old, but she'd been healthy, hadn't she? A vague unease rose like an approaching storm. I called Jessica. "Grandma's seriously ill. I'm heading to the hospital. Come when you can." She replied quickly, "Send me the address." "I'll be there." But her voice was unusually calm, as if guarded. We arrived at the hospital at the same time, parking hastily and rushing down the corridors. The strong smell of disinfectant, ambulance sirens echoing. The family had gathered, parents sitting in the waiting area, faces pale. Trevor leaning against the wall, worried but calculating. Grandma was in the ER and the doctor came out to meet us. "Mrs. Dorothy Wilson has advanced Parkinson's disease. Mobility is difficult, falls are common. She can no longer care for herself and needs long-term supervision and daily assistance." The doctor's words hit me like a blow to the chest. Parkinson's. I knew the disease. Tremors, muscle stiffness, gradual loss of independence. The hospital corridor turned heavy. The Wilson family members exchanged silent glances. Everyone understood. From this moment, real responsibility had arrived. No more empty words. It required concrete action. My heart raced. I waited tensely to see who would speak first. Soon after Grandma stabilized, the family decided to hold an urgent meeting at her house. The old place on the outskirts, with its musty wood smell mixed with familiar herbal tea, suddenly reminded me of peaceful childhood afternoons. We sat around the worn-edged dining table, but the atmosphere was entirely different. No one mentioned how weak Grandma was or what care she needed. Mom spoke first, voice tired but resolute. "We're so busy now. I have to watch the grandkids, housework piles up. I can't take care of her." Dad nodded immediately as if prepared. "That's right. My job doesn't allow it either. I have to help at home too." Then he turned to Trevor, tone commanding. "You're the eldest. Arrange to care for Grandma." Trevor frowned, leaning back in his chair, voice irritated. "I'm not free either. My wife works night shifts. The kid's always sick. Why not hire a caregiver? With money around, just pay for it." That suggestion drew nods of agreement. Whispers started. Everyone had their own reasons to dodge. No one looked directly at Grandma sitting quietly in the corner. I sat there, hands clasped, heart pounding. I clearly felt the storm building, and I knew it wouldn't stop at evasive words. Finally, when no one stepped up, the room fell unnaturally silent. Eyes slowly turned toward me one by one, as if reaching a shared conclusion. Dad voiced it, voice cold and emotionless. "Jacob, you received the money from Grandma, so you take care of her. It's only natural." Mom chimed in immediately. "That's right. She gave you so much. Now it's your turn to look after her." Trevor said nothing, just shrugged as if it was settled. Silent nods appeared around the table, making me feel this decision had been discussed beforehand, only waiting for my confirmation. I was stunned. My heart seemed to stop for a beat. In that moment, I understood that in their eyes, the old money mattered more than family ties. I wasn't a grandson. I was a debtor. I took a deep breath, lifted my head, and spoke slowly, each word clear. "All right, I'll take care of her." The room offered no protest. I continued, voice deeper but steady. "I'm doing this not because of the money from before and not because anyone here thinks it's my duty. Some things, if I don't do them, I won't be myself anymore." I looked each one in the eye. Grandma is the only one in this family who never doubted me, never made me ashamed of who I am. And as long as she needs me, I'll be there. A few sighed in relief, as if shedding a burden. No one said more, and I understood that from that moment I had separated myself from them. As I stood up, I didn't notice Jessica standing behind me at first. Only when she gripped my hand tightly, lips pressed thin, eyes growing cold, did I realize another conflict was quietly forming. One not loud, but certain not to end here. On the drive away from Grandma's house, the air in the car was thick and suffocating. Jessica drove, hands clenched on the wheel, silent for a long while as if holding something back. Then suddenly she burst out, voice high and urgent. "You're crazy, Jacob. What does Grandma have left that you have to take it all on? Bringing her home will just cost money, time, and effort." She kept going without letting me interrupt. "Think about it. Medications, food, constant monitoring. Who'll handle it? I work from morning to night. You have your job. What about our little family? Everything's stable now. Are you going to ruin it yourself?" Each word pressed directly on my chest. My heart ached, but I didn't raise my voice or defend myself. I just stared ahead, waiting for her to finish. When Jessica paused for breath, I spoke, voice low and firm. "Honey, caring for Grandma is something I have to do. Not because anyone imposed it, but because it's right." I continued more slowly. "She gave me so much. Not the money. Faith. She never turned her back on me." Jessica let out a dry laugh, shaking her head repeatedly, tears welling up unnoticed. "And what about me? You're choosing her over me, aren't you?" That question hung in the confined space of the car. I didn't answer immediately. Not because I didn't know the answer, but because I realized I couldn't lie. The tension was so thick I could hear both our ragged breaths, mixed with the steady engine hum pushing forward as if life was quietly veering in a different direction. Despite Jessica's clear opposition, I made the final decision: to bring Grandma home to live with us. I didn't do it impulsively nor out of debt or pressure from anyone. I did it because I knew clearly that if I turned away now, I could never look at myself again. It wasn't just a grandson's duty. It was the final boundary of my character. Grandma had lived her whole life quietly, never demanding or complaining, and in moments when I was doubted or belittled, she was the only one who placed unconditional faith in me. I knew this choice would cost a lot: peace, ease, perhaps even the marriage I had. But if keeping those meant trading my inner peace, the price wasn't worth it. I accepted walking the harder path as long as each morning I woke up able to live without shame toward myself. The day Dorothy was discharged, the Wichita sky was overcast, with light drizzle falling as if foretelling a long winter. I drove to the hospital alone, my heart pounding with vague anxiety. The doctor had given detailed instructions. She needed close monitoring, medication on time, and fall prevention. But as I walked down the corridor, only my footsteps echoed. No one else from the family came to pick her up. My parents cited being busy. Trevor had gone silent since the meeting, and even Jessica, she said, "I have an important meeting, you handle it yourself." That made me fall silent, a sharp pain piercing my chest. How could they abandon her like this? But in front of Grandma, I tried to stay composed, smiling brightly as I wheeled her out the door. "Grandma, today I'm taking you home with me. It'll be great." She looked at me, eyes clouded by illness but still warm. "Thank you, Jacob. I don't want to be a burden." I shook my head, swallowing hard. "It's no burden, Grandma. I'm happy to." I carefully helped her into the car, fastening the seatbelt gently. Her trembling hand touched mine. The whole drive home, I initiated conversation to dispel the heavy atmosphere. "Do you remember, Grandma, when I was little I'd hide at your house to avoid Dad scolding me for being naughty? You even made apple pie for me." She chuckled softly, voice weak. "Of course I remember. You were always the sweetest one." I talked about work, about the thriving wheat fields, reassuring her that everything would be fine. But inside, I told myself, from now on, I'd be the one caring for her devotedly, no matter the challenges ahead. Parkinson's was no joke. She'd need help with every meal, every step. I was ready, but that suspense made my hands grip the steering wheel tightly. Would I be strong enough? Would Jessica accept it? When Dorothy entered the house, the atmosphere immediately turned awkward. Jessica was in the kitchen, but she only greeted casually, voice indifferent, barely hiding her reluctance. Grandma nodded, trying to smile, but I saw a flicker of sadness. Jessica turned away, continuing to wash dishes as if Grandma's presence was an uninvited burden. I helped Grandma into the room I had prepared, a low bed, handrails, warm nightlight, and helped her settle to rest. "If you're tired, sleep, okay? Call me if you need anything." She held my hand. "You're too good, my grandson. No one else in the family has a heart as kind as yours." But when I returned to the kitchen, Jessica looked at me coldly. "Are you sure? Having her here and will change everything?" I nodded. "I'm sure of my decision." But my heart raced, sensing the storm forming. From the day Grandma moved in, my life changed completely. I reorganized my work, cutting hours from 8 to 6, shifting to more remote work to stay home and monitor her. Mornings I woke early to cook chicken mushroom soup by hand, help her take medication, then dove into the computer for agricultural reports. Afternoons I supported her, walking around the yard, watching every trembling movement. Evenings I cooked, did laundry, balancing care for her with maintaining family income. Engineering work wasn't always flexible. Missed field surveys made my boss frown. "Jacob, you need to focus more." I nodded apologies, but my heart felt heavy. Each day passed like a race, my heart racing with worry about her falling, about bills piling up. Jessica initially helped with necessities like changing bed sheets or buying medicine, but always with clear discomfort. "You know I'm busy. This is really inconvenient," she said irritably, as if doing something unwillingly. I thanked her, but saw her eyes full of resentment. Just 2 weeks in, she gradually withdrew, citing a busy new project. "I have to work overtime more." Jessica often left early and returned late, shifting nearly all Dorothy's care onto me. I handled everything alone from breakfast to bedtime, while Jessica came home just for dinner, then disappeared into her room with her laptop. "I'm exhausted. You handle it," she said, voice tired but reproachful. My heart hurt, but I didn't argue, just silently continued. What started as gentle discussions gradually turned into recurring small arguments, growing heavier. Jessica initiated, voice weary and tense. "I think we should hire a caregiver. I really can't take it anymore." I looked at her, trying to stay calm. "I'll try to manage better. Grandma doesn't just need care, she needs to feel like family, not a burden." Jessica shook her head, sighing. "But I don't have the strength. I work all day, coming home adds more stress. I feel like I'm burning out." I was silent a moment, then replied slowly but firmly. "I understand. But if even we push her to a stranger, I don't know what I'm holding on to anymore." From those seemingly small words, the distance between us grew, not loudly, but enough for both to feel a crack quietly forming. But those conversations repeated, circling responsibility, sacrifice, and each person's limits, until no one truly listened anymore. One night, after Grandma slipped and nearly fell in the bathroom, Jessica completely exploded. She stood in the room, voice high from long-suppressed tension. "See? I told you. She's a burden. I've sacrificed enough, Jacob. My career is advancing. My future is right ahead. Now I have to deal with this too." I stood silent a few seconds, trying not to tremble. She's family too. I can't abandon her. I can't pretend it doesn't concern me. Jessica shook her head, giving a bitter laugh as if hearing it too often. "And what about me? Have you ever thought about me?" I couldn't answer right away. The argument ended in silence. No slammed doors, no harsh words. But that silence was more frightening than anything. That night, the house felt unusually stifling. I lay awake long, staring at the dark ceiling, hearing steady breathing beside me, yet feeling the distance between us had never been greater. The suspense built gradually, not because I didn't know what I'd chosen, but because I started wondering if this marriage could endure that choice. Financial pressure began weighing heavily. Parkinson's costs, levodopa, physical therapy mounted, plus daily aids like lift chairs, grab bars, and unexpected emergencies. I constantly calculated expenses, cutting dining out, delaying purchases. Savings from the old check dwindled, making me anxious. Each monthly bill made my heart race, mind spinning with numbers. Jessica complained, "Our money is draining away because of her. You know that, right?" I stayed silent, but unease filled me. Dorothy gradually sensed the burden her presence brought to my family. She spoke less, often quietly watching me return home, visibly tired. Sometimes I caught her gaze lingering on me, sad and guilty, as if blaming herself for dragging me into an inescapable cycle. A few times, when alone together, she softly suggested returning home. "Maybe take me back to the old house," she said slowly, avoiding my eyes. "I'm used to it there. You'd have less trouble. I can manage alone." Hearing that, my heart tightened. I shook my head firmly. "No way, Grandma. I won't accept leaving you alone. You're staying here with me." Dorothy said no more. She just nodded faintly, lips forming a very slight smile. But from then on, I saw her withdraw more, careful in every movement, speaking less, asking less, as if trying to become as small as possible, not to disrupt my already cramped life. Jessica's attitude grew openly irritable. Subtle remarks, "Be careful not to fall again," or cold glances when Grandma asked for help, unintentionally hurting her feelings. Grandma retreated within the house she lived in, sitting in a corner reading old books, speaking little. It pained me. "Jessica, don't say that. Grandma's very frail," but she turned away. "I'm exhausted, honey." Throughout that time, no one in the Wilson family inquired or offered help. Parents called occasionally, asking superficially, "How's Grandma? You managing okay?" No one offered shifts or financial support, as if responsibility had fully transferred to me the moment I agreed. Trevor vanished, only sending perfunctory texts. I felt isolated, abandoned amid the burden. I gradually realized I was trapped between two sides. On one, the grandmother who had given me unconditional trust and love, with warm moments like her telling old stories. On the other, a marriage cracking day by day from exhaustion and simmering resentment. Each night, watching Jessica sleep turned away, I wondered, how much longer can I keep this up? That intense suspense kept me awake, like waiting for a bomb to explode. Life continued, but the crack grew larger. Time passed slowly. Each day was a struggle to maintain balance. I did my best to keep everything running smoothly, waking early to help Grandma with light exercises, preparing her medication on time, then diving into remote work with lengthy agricultural reports. Grandma grew weaker day by day, but when she smiled as I told stories about the fields, my heart warmed in an extraordinary way. "You're just like your grandfather, Jacob. He loved the land the same way," she said, voice trembling but full of affection. Those moments made me forget the exhaustion, forget Jessica's cold glances whenever she came home late. She still worked hard, but the distance between us widened. We talked less, touched less, and every dinner unfolded in heavy silence. I knew she was enduring it, but so was I. The worries accumulated like an underground river about to overflow. Then one day, an urgent work assignment came up. My boss called. "Jacob, I need you for a field survey in the southern plains. Just 3 days. The project needs progress. Pack and go immediately." I hesitated, checking the schedule. It coincided with a time when Grandma needed close monitoring due to worsening tremors lately. But work was our main income. I couldn't refuse. Before leaving, I talked clearly with Jessica. We sat in the kitchen under the dim yellow light. "Honey, I have to go on a business trip for 3 days. Can you stay home and look after Grandma for me? Just give her medication on time, help with meals, and keep an eye on her. I'll call often." Jessica looked at me, face darkening, unable to hide her displeasure. "You're doing this again? I'm really busy. The project has a deadline." "Fine, I'll try." She agreed reluctantly, attitude heavy, voice full of resentment. I hugged her gratefully, but the hug felt cold. I still believed a few short days wouldn't lead to anything serious. Early the next morning, I set off, driving the truck loaded with survey equipment across Kansas's endless fields. The open space, fertile land, and favorable weather made the work progress faster than expected. Measurements completed smoothly, data collected neatly, no significant issues. Just 2 days in, I finished the entire workload instead of the planned 3. The thought of returning home early filled me with quiet joy. I didn't tell Jessica, I wanted it to be a small surprise, a rare moment of relief amid the tense days. Driving back the over 4-hour journey, I constantly thought about Grandma. How has she been eating? Any more falls? Did Jessica remember her medication? The questions swirled in my head, making my heart beat faster. Images of Grandma's trembling hands holding a spoon or Jessica tired after work kept appearing. That suspense made my hands grip the wheel tighter. I pressed the accelerator harder. I just hope everything's okay, I told myself, but a bad premonition flickered. When I got home, dusk was falling. The kitchen light was still on, casting a warm yellow glow into the yard. I parked, walked into the yard with a ready smile, eager to see Dorothy safe in our familiar home. But right then a crash rang out, the sound of a plate shattering on the floor. My heart jolted. Immediately after came Jessica's harsh shouting from the dining room. "What are you doing? Why are you so clumsy? I told you not to touch anything." Her voice was high-pitched, full of anger, freezing my blood. I froze, then rushed to the kitchen window to look in. The scene pierced my heart like salt in a wound. Dorothy wearing an apron, hands trembling as she bent to pick up the broken plate, looking flustered and frightened on her aged face. My grandmother, the strong woman her whole life, now appeared small and frail, eyes red-rimmed, lips pressed tight to hold back tears. Jessica approached from behind aggressively, face flushed, continuing to berate loudly. "You're always like this, breaking everything. I'm exhausted, you know that? Why can't you just sit still?" Then suddenly she pushed Dorothy aside, not hard, but enough to unbalance her on legs weakened by Parkinson's. Grandma fell to the floor with a soft cry of pain. That moment stunned me briefly. The world blurred, only Grandma on the floor clutching her knee remained clear. Then anger and panic erupted like fire. I burst through the back door, startling both. The door slammed. I rushed to Grandma. "Grandma, are you hurt?" Jessica stood frozen, face paling, briefly panicked at my unexpected appearance. "Why are you back early? You said 3 days." She stammered, but quickly her attitude turned cold and defiant. She crossed her arms, eyes flashing. "You saw it. This is what I have to deal with when you're away." I rushed over, hurriedly helping Grandma up, heart pounding suffocatingly. I knelt beside her, carefully checking every part in panic. Thankfully, only minor scrapes on her elbow, nothing more serious. She gripped my hand tightly, her thin hand trembling in mine, voice breaking from fear and guilt. "I'm sorry, Jacob. I was careless. I just wanted to help Jessica a little. Who knew I'd drop the plate?" Hearing that, my heart clenched. I pulled her into my arms, hugging her frail body tightly, tears welling up uncontrollably. "It's okay, Grandma. Really okay. I'm home now. I'm here. You did nothing wrong." I helped her sit in a chair, pulling her cardigan around her, then stood up. Turning to Jessica, all the emotions I had suppressed over time suddenly burst, impossible to hold back. "What did you do, Jessica?" I said loudly, voice shaking with anger and pain. "Do you know how weak she is? You pushed her like that. If she fell harder, what would happen? You promised me you'd care for her while I was away. You said you could handle it." My hands clenched until white-knuckled. Helplessness made my whole body tremble. Jessica looked at me, eyes red, no longer avoiding or pretending. She retorted sharply, words pouring out as if releasing long-pent frustration. "You're asking what I did? She only brings trouble to this house. She ruins everything. I have to watch her constantly, always fearing something will happen." She cried as she spoke, but each word carried undisguised resentment. "I've endured enough, Jacob, truly enough. Living like this feels like being trapped in a cage. Medications, cleaning, watching every step. I'm no longer myself. I'm not a maid or a nurse." I stood frozen, looking at the woman before me, feeling like a complete stranger. "Do you really see Grandma as a burden?" I asked, voice dropping, pain numbing me nearly. "She's family. The one who gave birth to Dad. The one who trusted me when no one else did. You agreed. You said you'd try." Jessica shook her head forcefully. voice breaking from exhaustion and despair. I agreed because you forced me into that situation. I agreed thinking I could handle it. But I can't anymore. I don't want to live like this one more day. She looked straight at me, voice turning frighteningly cold. But you know I have to work. I can't stay home all the time. I have a new project, a big chance for promotion. Yet you want me to quit, stay home, watching her. Jessica gave a slight, bitter laugh. Do you know what that means for me? It means putting my job, my future aside to revolve around medications, meals, and guarding her every step. Tears streamed down her face, but her voice hardened. I've tried, Jacob. I really have. But I can't take it anymore. I don't want to live in a house always tense, always fearing something will happen. I don't want one more day like this. The kitchen space grew so heavy I could hear my own heartbeat. And then, in that tense moment, Jessica looked straight at me, voice chillingly cold. Let's end it, Jacob. I no longer want to play the role of wife in this house. Let's divorce. Those words struck me like a punch to the chest. I stood still, saying nothing, not pleading, just feeling something inside collapse completely, quietly, decisively, with no way back. I froze before that declaration, standing in the dining room with Grandma still trembling beside me. My heart raced chaotically, my mind spun, but I didn't plead or object. Because looking back at what had just happened, the sight of Grandma falling, Jessica's cold actions over time, the subtle remarks, the nights turned away, I realized she had never truly accepted Grandma, nor shared the values of life and responsibility I considered non-negotiable. Are you sure about this decision? I asked softly, voice choking. She nodded. I'm sure. I'll move out tomorrow morning. That night stretched endlessly. Jessica packed her things in the bedroom. The sound of suitcase wheels and items clinking echoed throughout the house. I sat with Grandma in the living room, gently cleaning the scrape on her elbow with antiseptic, my hands trembling slightly from the lingering anger. Grandma held my hand tightly, her clouded eyes full of worry. Don't divorce because of me, Jacob. I'm a burden. I know it. Be patient. Keep Jessica. Family is the most important thing. She spoke slowly, voice quivering from illness, trying to take the blame as if everything were her fault. My heart ached sharply. How could she think that? She had never been a burden. She was my source of strength. But despite Dorothy's repeated pleas that night and in the days that followed, urging me to endure and preserve the family and marriage, I remained resolute in choosing divorce. Grandma, it's not because of you. It's because I can't live with someone who doesn't share my values. I'll accept any loss as long as I don't turn my back on you. The words came out, but my heart felt heavy. That suspense, about a future alone with Grandma, about the lonely nights ahead, kept me awake, lying restless, listening to rain against the window. The next morning, Jessica left without looking back. She pulled her suitcase to the door, saying only, I'll contact you through a lawyer. I stood on the porch, watching her car disappear down the suburban Wichita street, feeling as if a part of my life had just shattered. Grandma stood beside me, patting my back gently. You'll be okay, Jacob. But I knew a new journey was beginning, full of uncertainty. The divorce proceedings started quickly. We each met with separate lawyers, and the court hearing took place just weeks later. Cold, brief, like a business meeting. Jessica demanded an even split of the house and all joint assets, furniture, savings accounts, even wedding gifts we had bought together. I sat in the defendant's seat, listening to the lawyer read the terms, heart pounding with tension. Do you agree to the even division? My lawyer asked. I nodded, accepting everything without hesitation. Because for me now, only one thing mattered, being with Grandma. Money, the house, it all lost meaning. The hearing ended. I signed the papers, feeling as if signing a self-imposed sentence. Jessica looked at me one last time, eyes mixed with regret and anger, then turned away. I left the courthouse under Wichita's gray sky, heavy rain falling, wondering, now what? After the divorce, I sold the old house, the place once full of happy memories but now only pain, and rented a small, simple one on the outskirts of Wichita. Just 2 bedrooms, a small kitchen, a backyard big enough for Grandma to sit and enjoy the breeze. Not luxurious, but enough for the 2 of us to rely on each other. I moved our things in, rearranging everything. Grandma's bed near the window for garden views, a small dining table where we could talk. The first days felt strange. I woke earlier, brewed strong black coffee to stay alert, then helped Grandma get up. "New home, Grandma. I'll make you comfortable," I said, forcing a smile. She nodded, but I saw her worry. "Do you regret your decision?" I shook my head. "I've decided and I won't regret it." The new life began, free from arguments, free from overlapping work pressures. Only fragile but genuine peace remained. I cut expenses, shifted to more freelance work to stay home with her, and gradually life slowed down. Financial worries lingered, medication bills arrived regularly, but I pushed them aside, focusing on the present. The following months passed in rare gentleness. No more echoing arguments, no more resentful glances, only quiet care and the feeling of being where I belonged. Each morning I helped Grandma into the yard, sitting in mild sunlight, telling her about work. Yesterday I surveyed a new field. The wheat was so green, Grandma. She smiled, voice faint. "When your grandfather was alive, he told me stories like that too." Afternoons I cooked simple meals, nutritious chicken soup, fresh salads. No more forced dinners, just the gentle clink of spoons against bowls. Evenings we sat at the small table and she told me about Grandpa. He often talked about the war, but I loved hearing him sing lullabies, Grandma said, eyes sparkling with memories. I listened, asking more. Was Grandpa a good singer? She nodded, then shared about the hard years. Poverty, saving every penny, sleepless nights, worrying for children and grandchildren. The memories Dorothy had cherished her whole life, she now shared freely without hesitation. I realized she smiled more, talked more, as if finally living in a space free from judgmental eyes or hurtful words. "Living with you makes me so happy, Jacob," she said once, holding my hand tightly. My heart warmed, but suspense crept in. Her health was visibly declining. Still, Dorothy's health weakened day by day. More tremors, less appetite, joint pain from Parkinson's tormenting her at night. She tried to hide the fatigue, not wanting to worry me more. "I'm fine, don't worry," she said whenever I asked. But I knew. Nights she stayed awake, soft groans from her room. I took extended leave from work, devoting all my time to her care. From meals, pureeing soft food, spoon-feeding, to sleep, changing diapers, washing her. When she grew too weak to walk, I wheeled her around the house, telling cheerful stories to distract from pain. I did everything with absolute patience and tenderness, as if each passing moment was precious and unrepeatable. "Grandma, shall I read to you today?" I said, holding Grandpa's old favorite book on farming. She nodded, eyes brightening. In those days, time slowed, but suspense about her passing made my heart race faster. "You'll stay with me a long time, right?" I thought silently, knowing it wasn't so. Then one morning, Dorothy suddenly became unusually lucid. Wichita's sky was beautifully sunny. A breeze through the window carried fresh grass scent. She sat up in bed, mind clearer than usual, tremors much reduced. "Jacob, I feel so good today," she said, voice clear. We talked more and longer than recent days about her life, family, mistakes, and joys. She looked at me for a long time, eyes kind yet unusually alert, then spoke slowly. "You're the only one in the family who never disappointed me, and the only one who didn't turn away when I needed it most." She paused, gathering her remaining strength. "I chose right, Jacob. The best choice in my whole life was believing in you." Those words fell gently, but my heart pounded with emotion and vague worry. I leaned down, hugging her tightly, voice trembling. "Grandma, I love you. I'm here. Don't worry about anything." Dorothy smiled very faintly, a strangely peaceful smile. She said no more, just gently closed her eyes, breathing softening as if finally at ease. entrusting everything unsaid to me. After those final words, Dorothy closed her eyes and passed peacefully in my arms without pain or fear. She just exhaled softly, then fell forever silent. I sat beside her a long while, still holding her hand tightly, not crying aloud. But inside, a vast, profound emptiness opened, as if the most important part of my life had left forever. Tears rolled down, but I didn't wipe them, just sitting there looking at her, face serene, faint smile on her lips. "Grandma's gone?" I whispered, heart tearing. That suspense had become reality. She had left, leaving me alone with memories and unending loss. The hours that followed passed in a haze, like a heavy dream. I called the doctor to confirm, voice trembling over the phone, then sat silently beside her for a few more hours, unwilling to leave. Finally, I had to stand up, wipe my face, and begin arranging the funeral. I handled everything simply yet respectfully, without ostentation, just as she had lived her whole life, frugally, humbly, but meaningfully. She had once told me, "When I go, don't make it grand, Jacob. Just family and a few close ones are enough." I remembered those words, so I chose a small funeral home on the outskirts of Wichita. With a simple wooden casket, fresh flowers picked from the backyard, and a brief ceremony. Only quiet prayers and shared memories. I saw it as my final repayment to the person who had sacrificed and trusted me to the very end. With every detail I arranged, my heart raced with suspense. Was I doing it as she wished? Would others understand? But I pushed those worries aside, focusing on honoring her. The funeral took place on a drizzly afternoon. The Kansas sky was gray, as if weeping in her place. Old neighbors, those who had lived next to Grandma in her old suburban home, came one by one to pay respects. Mrs. Smith, the next-door neighbor, hugged me tightly. Dorothy was the best person I knew. She often brought cookies over, telling old stories. She lived simply, but her heart was vast. Those simple memories of afternoons she spent knitting, of how she shared food with poorer neighbors, made the funeral atmosphere quiet but warm. People sat around sharing stories, soft laughter mingling with tears. I listened, my heart warming slightly amid the pain, but suspense still surged. Would my family come? How would they behave? The Wilson family arrived in full, but a bit late. Dad Allen entered with his usual stern expression, but forced a polite smile. Mom Betty followed, carrying a white wreath, speaking proudly. Brother Trevor came with his wife and child. They sat in the front row, but their eyes held more scrutiny than grief. Dad glanced around the funeral home, whispering to Mom, "Too simple, isn't it? Grandma deserved more." But I knew behind those words was calculation, as if her passing was just the opening for unfinished schemes. Trevor sat silently in the front row, but his eyes occasionally swept toward me, full of speculation, as if wondering, how would things go with the will? The memorial room atmosphere was quiet but tense, though everyone tried to maintain an appearance of mourning. When it was my turn to speak, I took the microphone and said only a few short words, as people do at such ceremonies. "My grandmother lived a very simple life," I said, voice slow and low. "She didn't talk much, didn't show off, but she always knew whom to trust and for what. She taught me that responsibility isn't something to boast about, it's something you uphold when no one is watching." I paused, then added, "She left me, and all of us, a clear example of how to live. I'll always carry that with me." A few people nodded quietly. Some wiped tears silently. But my family remained silent. Subtle exchanged glances, meaningful looks made my hands tremble slightly on the microphone. Not from the pain of losing her, but because I knew they were waiting for something else. And this silence was probably only temporary. I completed the funeral in silence, without resentment or expectation of thanks. I saw it as the final duty of a grandson who had been given her complete trust. As people left, I stood alone by her grave, wind blowing through the cemetery, carrying the scent of damp earth. "Grandma, from now on I'll live well," I whispered, tears falling again. The days after the funeral felt empty. I returned to work, but everything seemed faded. The small house now held only me. Footsteps echoed. I cleaned Grandma's things, old books, the sweater she knitted, and each item stirred memories, making my heart race with pain. A week later, as I sat in the kitchen brewing coffee, the phone rang. Unknown number, but the voice familiar. "Hello, Jacob. This is Attorney Harris representing Dorothy Wilson. There's a will reading this afternoon. You need to be there on time." My heart tightened. A will? Grandma had never mentioned it. I agreed, but suspense surged. What did she leave? How would the family react? I drove to the lawyer's office in downtown Wichita, hands gripping the wheel tightly, mind swirling with guesses. When I arrived, Alan, Betty, and Trevor were already seated in the small conference room, attitudes indifferent. Dad shrugged. "Grandma only had the old house in the country. What's there to divide?" Mom nodded, hinting, "Probably split evenly, right?" Trevor smirked. "I hope so." The air was tense. Their eyes probed me as if I knew something. But the atmosphere changed completely when the lawyer began reading the will. He sat straight, voice clear. The will was drafted 2 years ago when Mrs. Dorothy was fully competent. Each detail was stated decisively, like hammer blows into the silence. According to the will, all of Dorothy's assets, including her share of Grandpa's property preserved over the years, from rural real estate, discrete investments, to legal trust funds, with a total value exceeding $3.2 million, were left entirely to me. All to grandson Jacob Wilson for his trust and care, the lawyer read evenly. I was stunned by the information, completely unprepared for the true scale of the estate. My heart raced wildly, my mind reeled. $3.2 million! How did she keep it so hidden? I sat frozen, hands clutching the chair, unable to believe my ears. Meanwhile, my parents and Trevor froze, then quickly turned furious. Dad Alan slammed the table. "What's going on? This is outrageous favoritism." What was wrong with Grandma? Mom Betty cried. "How could she do this? We're her own children." Trevor seethed, face flushed, implying about me. "Jacob must have influenced or manipulated her in her final years. How else?" The lawyer calmly confirmed, "All documents are legal. The will was made competently with witnesses and uncontestable." He presented the papers, explaining each item: stocks from Grandpa's investments, secret savings funds, higher valued properties than imagined. Protests gradually became meaningless. Shouts faded to helpless whispers. The Wilson family left in anger and helplessness, unable to hide their embarrassment. Dad glared at me. "Satisfied now?" Mom sobbed. "Grandma was biased, not even a penny for her own children." Trevor shook his head. "This is unfair." They realized they had only seen the surface, Grandma's simple life, while the true value Dorothy had kept hidden until the end. I left the lawyer's office afterward, feeling no joy or relief. Only emptiness and heaviness, because that large sum was no longer a gift, but the final proof of the absolute faith Grandma had placed in me. On the drive home, heavy rain fell. I drove slowly, tears rolling again. "Grandma, I'm not worthy of this money," I whispered. That suspense had become a burden. What would the money bring? How would the family react further? I returned home, sat alone looking at the will in my hand, heart racing with unease. My life had changed, but the loss remained greater than anything. The days after the funeral carried the pain of losing Grandma intact, like an unhealed wound. I woke each morning in the small house, looking around the empty living room where she used to sit telling old stories, and loneliness crashed over me like waves. My agricultural engineering work became my only anchor, trips to the fields, land measurements, reports helping me forget somewhat. But before I could even begin to heal, new worries flooded in relentlessly. The story of the inheritance began spreading, casting a shadow over my already fragile life. I hadn't told anyone, but rumors spread quickly among relatives, perhaps from the lawyer or my parents' whispers. The phone rang constantly. Messages poured in, and I knew the storm was coming. My heart raced every time the screen lit up. suspense building as I waited to see who would visit first. My parents were the first to appear. Just days after the will reading, they knocked on my door one windy, rainy evening. I opened it to see Dad Allen standing there with belated remorse on his face, Mom Betty beside him holding her familiar basket of homegrown fruit, like a talisman for awkward visits. "How have you been, son?" Dad spoke first, voice softer than his usual sternness. "We've been so worried. We came to check on you." Mom chimed in immediately, setting the basket on the table, eyes glistening as if about to cry. "Your grandma left so suddenly. We're heartbroken. It hurts so much to think about." They sat on the sofa asking scattered questions, but I clearly sensed the impatience behind every glance. And as I expected, Mom spoke first, voice slowing, more careful. "Son, that much money Grandma left, it must be a lot of pressure managing it alone. We have life experience, money management experience. Why not let us handle part of it to ease your burden?" Dad nodded in agreement, leaning toward me. "Your mom's right. We'd manage it as a family. Besides, you should think about supporting your parents. It's a son's natural duty, especially now that you're able." My heart tightened. Not one question about how I was coping, whether I was overcoming the grief of losing her. Just calculations disguised as concern. I kept my voice calm. "Mom, Dad, I understand. But I need time to think." They exchanged glances, disappointment flashing briefly, then smiled again. "Take your time. We're not in a rush. Tell us when you're ready." The door closed behind them, leaving me alone in the quiet house, heart racing with the feeling of being surrounded. I tried to avoid it, turning off my phone ringer for hours each day just to breathe, but the worry clung. Every night I lay awake thinking about the $3.2 million, assets Grandma had kept hidden her whole life. "You did it so I could have a better life," I whispered to the empty room. "But I'm scared, Grandma. Scared of my own blood relatives." Not long after, Trevor showed up. He knocked one afternoon, holding a thick folder, familiar polite smile on his face. "Little brother, I came to visit. You look different these days." We sat in the kitchen. Trevor didn't beat around the bush, spreading the papers on the table. Charts, numbers, carefully painted prospects. "Take a look at this," he said excitedly. "It's a real estate project on the Wichita outskirts. At least 20% return yearly. We brothers invest together like old times. You have the money, I have banking experience. Isn't this a fat opportunity?" He talked nonstop, painting high-rises, steady cash flow, bright future, as if the cracks between us had never existed. But I saw the holes clearly, vague figures, no real surveys, risks too high to control. I pushed the folder back. "Trevor, I need to consider very carefully. This isn't small." He smirked, voice half joking, half pressuring. "Opportunities don't wait, Jacob. Decide quick or you'll regret it." He left, leaving the folder on the table. I stared at it a moment, then threw it straight in the trash, heart still racing from the mounting pressure. But what shocked me most was Jessica's appearance. Days after Trevor, she called, voice unusually sweet. "Jacob, I want to meet. It's important." We met at a cafe near home. Jessica arrived early, carefully made up, sitting across from me with brazen confidence. "I heard about the will," she said directly. "That much money. I think I deserve a share." I stared, unable to believe my ears. "I did care for her while she lived with us," she continued casually. "Not much, but it was effort. Give me a little, as compensation." Blood rushed hot through me. "Jessica, you called her a burden. You pushed her down. How can you say this now?" She immediately shifted blame. "You forced me into that life. Marriage pressure, my sacrifices. Do you know what I endured?" Her voice choked. Tears fell on the table. "Just a small part, Jacob. I'm struggling. You can't be that heartless." I stood up, voice cold. "I won't give you anything. You have no right. And don't contact me again." Jessica glared, then stood abruptly and left. I sat alone, heart pounding, realizing I wasn't just holding assets, I was defending Grandma's final choice against everyone who had turned their backs on her. In the days that followed, I had almost no truly peaceful moments. My phone never stopped ringing. Calls, messages, requests from parents, brother, and ex-wife alternated, as if they had silently coordinated a schedule to besiege me from all sides. Dad often called early, voice low but urgent. "Jacob, what do you think about what we discussed? Don't keep us waiting too long, it's not good." Before I could exhale, Mom's message appeared. "Son, I haven't been well lately. Doctor says more monitoring needed. Medicine costs a lot. Help your mom out. I only have you to rely on." Trevor didn't call. He sent emails, long, polished with attached plans. "Review this project for me. I've revised it. Much safer than before. Brothers investing together can't lose. Put in capital. Don't miss out." Then Jessica, calling at night, voice choked. "Jacob, I know I was wrong, but I'm really struggling now. Help me just this once. Only 100,000. It's nothing to you." Each notification made my heart beat faster. Not because I wavered, but because I wondered what tactic they'd use next. Flattery, blame, or pity. I started turning off the phone for hours just to breathe, but they didn't give up. Even my parents visited again, bringing gifts, fruit baskets, and familiar affectionate smiles. Dad patted my shoulder, voice full of feeling. "We're family. We share, help each other." Those words made my mind spin, feeling cornered from every side, no space to retreat. Faced with that wave of harassment, I grew quieter and more resolute. I didn't argue, didn't explain at length, didn't let them draw me into negotiations. To my parents over the phone, I said firmly, "I've thought it through. I don't agree. And please, let's not discuss this further." To Trevor briefly, "I won't invest in any of your projects. Don't send more plans." To Jessica, one sentence, "We're done. Don't call me again." Each time I said those words, my heart still pounded, still faintly worried about their next reaction. But I didn't back down. I knew clearly that yielding once would collapse everything I was holding. Grandma chose me because I didn't doubt, didn't calculate. If I shared, if I compromised, I'd become exactly the kind of person she had avoided her whole life. Every night I opened the drawer, looked at the silent will inside, and whispered to the dark room, "Grandma, I'll keep it. I'll keep it just as you trusted me to." Through each encounter and request, I realized a cold truth. They weren't sorry for treating Dorothy badly. They only regretted missing the chance to stand by her when things could have changed. My parents didn't mention doubting her, didn't apologize for shirking responsibility. Trevor wasn't sorry for tearing the check years ago. Jessica wasn't sorry for pushing her down. They only regretted the money, the $3.2 million, and tried to extract it from me. That realization made my heart ache, suspense from loneliness. Is my family really just this? I locked the door, turned off the phone, sat alone in the dark, tears falling. Life continued, but the burden grew heavier. I knew they wouldn't stop easily. I realized everything began to change when the silence stretched unusually long. My parents stopped calling to pressure me. Trevor sent no more plans. Jessica went completely silent. At first, I thought they had finally understood and accepted it. But that feeling didn't last. The first signs came very quietly. One evening, I received a call from an aunt I hadn't spoken to in ages. Her voice sounded strange, evasive. "I'm just asking to clarify. People are saying you cared for Grandma only to get her to leave you the inheritance. Is that true?" I froze. Before I could respond, she quickly backpedaled. "I only heard it from others. I don't know if it's real." Then similar calls increased. An uncle asked bluntly while pretending concern, "How did you manage to get Grandma to leave everything to you?" Outsiders hearing it can't help but misunderstand. Through those scattered conversations, I gradually pieced together the full picture. Somewhere, stories had been distorted, embellished, repeated until they became truth in others' mouths. I overheard whispers that I was called ungrateful, greedy, exploiting an elderly person to seize assets. My heart raced every time I heard such things, not from shame, but because I didn't know how far they had spread. I knew clearly my parents were behind those stories. They often complained to relatives about Grandma's unfair favoritism, about how badly they had been treated. Trevor didn't say it directly. He posted vague statuses on Facebook like, "Some people get everything handed to them but forget their roots." No names mentioned, but everyone reading knew who he meant. As for Jessica, I learned through mutual friends. They hesitantly recounted that she had said I forced Grandma to live with us to manipulate the will, that I had calculated every step from the start. Those words were relayed with half belief, half doubt, but enough for me to understand how my image had changed in their eyes. The truth was bent little by little, and I, who had chosen silence, gradually became the villain in a story I had lived myself. I had to face suspicious looks from old acquaintances. At the cafe near work, a former colleague patted my shoulder. "Heard you struck it rich? But why treat your family like that?" Relatives called to check in, but full of probing. "Grandma left so much, did you share with your parents?" The surrounding community, neighbors in Wichita, gossiped behind my back, eyes averting when I passed on the street. That suspense kept me restless. My heart raced every time I left the house, wondering what new rumor I'd hear today. But I didn't justify, didn't refute, didn't try to clear my name. Let them think what they want, I told myself, locking the door tighter, avoiding encounters. Explaining would only worsen it. They had chosen rumors over truth. That loneliness surged, but I stayed silent, as Grandma had done her whole life. After all the noise and hurt, I decided to withdraw completely from the whirlwind of gossip. Unable to live forever under that pressure, I chose silence and departure as a decisive end to a contradictory past. I sold most assets tied to old memories, the small house in Wichita, even some items Grandma left that I didn't want to keep for fear of reminders. The sales went quickly, but each signing made my heart race with suspense. Am I leaving everything behind? The proceeds added to the inheritance, but I didn't care. I moved to a remote coastal town in Oregon, Cannon Beach, where waves crash softly and salty wind clears all worries. Completely cut off from what I once called family. No one knew I came from Wichita, asked about my past. I drove 2 days straight along endless highways, stopping only at rest areas and gas stations, heart pounding with suspense about the new life. Am I doing the right thing? I wondered, but deep down I knew it was my escape. There I bought a small house overlooking the ocean, simple and private. One story, wooden porch facing the sea, small kitchen, modest bedroom. No one knew where I was from, what I had experienced, or the size of my assets. The first mornings I stood on the porch listening to waves, wind through my hair, peace creeping in. But suspense lingered. Would they find me? Would rumors spread? I ditched the old phone number, got a new one, and gradually the old world faded. I opened a small cafe by the beach, tending every detail myself as if rebuilding a new life. I named it Dorothy's Brew, Grandma's name, but to everyone it was just a warm-sounding name. No one knew its true meaning. I painted the walls pale sea blue, set rustic wooden tables and chairs, hung a few wave-inspired paintings drawn from afternoons gazing at the ocean. Each morning I rose early, hand-grinding roasted beans, steaming fresh milk from nearby farms, letting coffee aroma fill the cafe as the sun rose over the water. Regular customers gradually appeared. Local fishermen stopped by to share sea tales, storm stories. Tourists paused, sharing their journeys. "Your coffee's great, buddy," an old man smiled, taking another sip. I smiled back. "Thanks for the support. It's a secret recipe from my grandma." Life slowed in a way I had never allowed before. No more rushed agricultural reports, no harassing calls or probing looks. I had afternoons reading by the sea, evenings listening to wind through palms, heart lightening noticeably. Occasionally, memories surged unexpectedly. The wedding day, the check, Grandma falling to the floor. My heart raced suddenly as if someone knocked hard on a closed door. But then I breathed deeply, letting coffee scent and wave sounds pull me back to the present. Here, I didn't need to prove anything to anyone. I just lived, slowly, peacefully, as Grandma had wished for me. My new life flowed steadily and gently without pressure or scheming. Only mornings listening to waves crash softly, breathing salty air, and evenings closing in quiet with a hot cup of tea by the window. The cafe grew busier, but I kept it small, no expansion. Regulars became friends, Mrs. Mary sharing grandkids' stories, Tom talking fishing experience. I lived simply, spending frugally as Grandma taught. Past suspense flickered occasionally, but the ocean washed it away. Quietly, I used part of the inheritance to establish a small charity in Grandma's name. Dorothy's Legacy. The fund supported lonely elderly and abandoned children in the way she lived, helping silently. I transferred money regularly, funding nursing homes in Oregon, scholarships for orphans. No publicity, no press, just quietly doing what I believed Grandma would smile at if she were here. "Grandma, I'm continuing your legacy," I whispered, signing the first charity check, heart racing with emotion. Jacob sought no recognition, only knowing the money now brought good. One day, walking alone on the beach, fine sand underfoot, gentle waves, I suddenly recalled the entire journey. From the laughter-filled wedding in Wichita, radiant smiles beside Jessica, to Grandma's unexpected check, bank shock, dramatic housewarming, her illness, explosive argument, painful divorce, her peaceful passing, shocking will, endless harassment. Some losses were irreplaceable, a broken marriage, a family drifting apart, but standing before the sea now, I understood every painful choice had led to this peaceful moment. My heart raced with emotion. Tears fell, dissolving into the salty wind. And for the first time in so long, I felt no regret. I gradually understood that family isn't just where one is born, but where one chooses to stay, with respect, kindness, and responsibility toward each other. When money appears, it doesn't create new people. It only reveals true ones. It can turn loved ones into strangers, make affection weighed like goods, but one thing it can never buy: character. And in the moment of greatest loss, I realized which relationships were worth keeping and which to let go without hesitation. The lesson I kept for myself was quiet, needing no recognition. Trust shouldn't be misplaced, sacrifice shouldn't trade dignity, and sometimes walking away in silence is the only way to protect remaining true values. Before me, the sea stretched vast. Wind brushed my shoulders lightly. I smiled, whispering like a promise. "Thank you, Grandma, for believing in me when no one else did, for leaving me not just assets, but a way to live. I carry it every day." Life continued, and this time I was ready to move forward, without resentment, only the peace I had chosen for myself.